supporting the water treatment community since 1989. The blender matters because expertise matters. Qualichem's team includes 5 certified water technologists, more than any other AWT supplier. Their professionals have walked in your shoes. So whether you need sales support, troubleshooting in the field, or help closing that big account, you'll get real solutions from experts who speak your language. This commitment to their customers has been recognized repeatedly, from being named the Supplier of the Year by the Association of Water Technologies in 2016 to investing in a new 48,000 square foot global headquarters facility in Salem, Virginia. The facility features modern office space and a world-class laboratory designed to enhance collaboration and innovation. To find out more about Qualichem, go to scalinguph2o.com/Qualichem. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/Qualichem. At Qualichem, we know the blender matters. Life and business can feel chaotic when you're trying to do it all. That's where Andy Melton Coaching comes in. For nearly 2 decades, Dr. Andy Melton has helped high-achieving leaders find freedom in their time, relationships, finances, and purpose. His 90-minute strategic rhythm reset is more than a coaching session. It's a chance to redesign your week so you can get more done without burning out. You'll create a personalized rhythm blueprint that aligns your goals and priorities and walk away with a clear plan to focus your energy. Trade chaos for clarity and bring your dreams to life. To learn more and book your session, visit scalinguph2o.com/Andy Melton. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/ANDYMELTON. Don't wait. Schedule a strategic rhythm reset with Dr. Andy Melton today. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm the host, Trace Blackmore, CWT, Certified Water Technologist. And Nation, today we're going to talk to an individual that has done so much for the industrial water treatment field. And we're going to talk about what he's continuing to do for all of us and even people outside of the industrial water treatment field. So I can't wait until I can introduce that guest to you, but I'm not quite there yet. There's always so many things that are going on in our industry, and I want to make sure that you know about those things. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is the 2026 American Chemical Society Fall Conference. That is taking place on August 23rd through 27th. Now, I am not a member of the American Chemical Society, but I have been shown their secret handshake. So who knew they had a secret handshake? Well, now you do. And I've been sworn to secrecy, so I can't talk about it here on the air. But perhaps you're going to go to this and you'll learn what that secret handshake is. Now, that's taking place, their conference in Chicago, Illinois. And this is where thousands of chemistry professionals come together to meet each other, to share scientific and technical knowledge. And it's all organized by the American Chemical Society. Now, this is one of the most well-known organizations out there, definitely one of the well-known organizations within our industry. And so many people that work in our industries are members of the American Chemical Society. Now, this year, they're expected to attract about 14,000 participants, which is going to be chemists, chemical engineers, graduate and postdoctorate students, and all types of other professionals. Now, we're going to have all the information on our events page, and you can get there by going to scalinguph2o.com and going over to our events page. Now, while you're there, go ahead and go over to the Hang. And the Hang, we are bringing back It's one of our very much requested and popular events that we do where you get to meet people within our industry. And our next hang is going to be July 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, I mentioned on an earlier show that we changed the time from the evening to the afternoon because people said, hey, we really want to be involved, and we'll be able to be involved if you changed it to an earlier time. That was done via a survey. So it's my hope that we're going to see a whole bunch of people that we normally don't see on hangs. And folks, if you've never been to a hang, you are going to want to do this because you are going to meet so many people that could possibly help you with an issue that you're having, or maybe you can help them with an issue that they are having. I promise I'm going to make it fun. I'm going to make it easy. All you have to do is sign up, and you can do that by going to scalinguph2o.com/the hang. And once again, that's July 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, the other thing I'm going to bring up is something that I get super excited about. It takes so much work, but yet I still get excited about it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Industrial Water Week. Industrial Water Week is the first full week of October. And this year, that first full week falls on Monday the 5th. So on Monday the 5th, we are going to celebrate pre-treatment. On Tuesday the 6th, we're going to celebrate boilers. On Wednesday the 7th, we're going to celebrate cooling. On Thursday the 8th, we're going to celebrate wastewater. And then on Friday the 9th, we are going to celebrate careers in this amazing industry. And nation, just like last year, we have a brand new Detective H2O each and every episode that is airing on each of those days. And nation, when I tell you we have to put together a lot of content for a show, we do, and we do it lovingly for the Scaling Up Nation. But now we're doing 5 of them all compressed in 1 week. So that shows the Scaling Up Nation how much we love each and every one of you, because we are doing a tremendous amount of work to put this on. But we do it because it's our holiday. It's where we get to celebrate what it is that we do. And each and every year, it gets bigger. And I see so many more social media posts where companies are celebrating and doing things. I saw more last year than I did the year before. And the year before, I saw more then than I did the year before that. Each and every year, it gets bigger and bigger. And I cannot wait to see how big it is going to be this year. But I want you to start planning for it now. Remember to mark your calendars for October 5th through 9th, Industrial Water Week. Well, Nation, the founder of Industrial Water Week is our friend James McDonald, and here he is with a brand new installment of Words of Water.
Hello and welcome to Words of Water with James, the Industrial Water game show where I give you the definition and you get to guess the word or phrase being defined. Will you rise to the top or get blown down to try your luck another day? There's only one way to find out on Words of Water with James. Today's definition is the air temperature measured by a standard dry bulb thermometer exposed to the air but shielded from radiation, and often associated with cooling towers in our line of work. The answer is dry bulb temperature. Okay, for those who got it correct, step to the right. For those who got it wrong, please step to the left. I've been told we've reached new lows in this show. I'm James McDonald, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Words of Water with James.
Well, thank you, James. Nation, now here is our interview. My lab partner today is Paul Petersen, former president and CEO of Trident Technologies, and currently leading the Industrial Water Task Group, advancing the initiative to establish an exhibit at the National Museum of Industrial History. Paul, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Hi, Trace. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure having you. You and I got introduced by the fine people over at the Aqua Phoenix booth last AWT conference. We started talking about the things that you are doing, and we both agreed we got to get you to come on this show so you can tell the Scaling Up Nation about it.
Exactly. Exciting to do.
Well, before we do that, do you mind introducing yourself to the Scaling Up Nation?
Absolutely. Trace, I was born in Tucson, Arizona, born and raised there. And of course, that means I'm a desert rat. And living in the desert for most of my early years, you develop an appreciation for water from the get-go. And so I think that kind of sets the stage and foundation for my lifetime in industrial water, if you will. Growing up in Tucson, I ended up going to the University of Arizona, graduating from there, and I kind of had my eye on a career in law. I was going to go to law school, and I look back and I thank every day for the fact that I didn't end up doing that, because I ended up with a career in industrial water treatment. And for me, I think that's been one of the best things I could have ever done. My business career really began with a process in which I worked for the Duval Corporation, a division of Pennzoil United, which was a copper mining concern in Tucson. I began working there as a analytical technician. And as such, I got the low man on the totem pole job of running all the waters. They called them the waters. And that meant I analyzed various water samples throughout the mining operation, from their cooling towers to their boilers to their process waters, and began with just a basic understanding of water chemistry at that point. I worked for them for a couple of years, and then I went back to school, got my degree. And during that time, I got a job with the Mogul Corporation, old name in the water treatment industry, and worked for them in a technical support capacity and did some initial work in sales development for them. But when I graduated from the University of Arizona, they offered me an opportunity to go to San Diego and begin some market development work for them. And my career really in water treatment began at that point. I moved to San Diego, and there was really no business there. Not an industrial megastructure, if you will, but a lovely place to live. I worked hard, and I gained a degree of success there. My business expanded in San Diego. I also did a lot of work in Mexico at that time. So that was kind of an interesting process for me. It was kind of the frontier of my territory, being able to go into an international business environment. I held a number of positions with Mogul during my career with them. I became a district manager, did some specialized work, some M&A work for them at the very, very end. And then in 1986, I started Trident Technologies. We began to develop our business in the San Diego region, Southern California, and in Latin America, in Mexico. At Trident, we ultimately developed a subsidiary, Trident Technologies SA to CV, which was a Mexican affiliate, and did business throughout Latin America at that time. During that period, we also acquired a company called Water Technologies, which was the oldest water treatment company in San Diego at the time, kind of solidifying our presence in the new construction market, which is an aspect of our business that became a pivotal and important part. Our business continued to flourish until 2009, at which time we sold the business, both our international businesses in Mexico and San Diego, to ChemTreat, a division of Danaher. And at that point, I changed career paths. People asked me what I was doing, and I often would answer, I'm a professional golfer, but it doesn't pay very well. And so here we are.
Well, we are glad that you're here. Wow, 4 decades of experience. How have you seen the industry change over that time?
Oh my, Trace, that's a good question. And probably one of the very first things that comes to mind is what we're doing right now, and that's the use of technology. There was nothing even close to the Scaling Up Nation and Scaling Up podcast at that time. And of course, there was in the early stages of my career, there was not a lot of the technology that exists today. So it significantly has impacted what our industry has become. I think what I see most is the timely use of that, from cell phones to email to webcasting to social media, the internet, AI, automation. And automation has really influenced some of the changes in the water treatment industry. My gosh, a camera is a cell phone. Everybody's got a camera, and that helps us, do so many things to support the needs of our customers. Supply chain, product delivery, and I think just the availability of information. There's just so much out there. I mean, if you really want to find out something, all you have to do is Google it or Chat GBT, and you get an answer. But you've got to be, cautious and really making sure that that answer is correct. So there's some validation necessary to utilize all this technology, I think. It certainly has transformed from somebody referred to it as the golden age of water treatment at some point. And I don't think that was because we were using chromate, but it could have been. But technology has played a disrupting role for most industries, but for water treatment as well.
What do you think AI is going to bring to the industry?
From my perspective, I think it'll make some aspects of a professional water treater's job a little easier. Writing those reports and doing some of the day-to-day interpretations and communications, it'll certainly help in that area. But I don't know. I think the future will really be an interesting one.
I tell you, it's fantastic some of the things that AI can do with data research. We loaded a bunch of service reports in and say, do you see any trends? And it came back with some stuff. Some stuff we were thinking about, and other stuff we were like, well, I don't know if that's 100% right, but it's going to get us looking in that area. I think that's going to allow us to do more of the job that we love and maybe less of the research type stuff. But we're both going to see.
I agree. I think it's going to make a big difference.
Paul, what are you doing now? Tell us about your work as the Industrial Water Task Force Group Chairman.
Well, I guess maybe to give you a little background on that, I have a number of interests and a lot of things that I do today that I look back and I go, how did I find time to work? Because there's just so many things to do, from fly fishing to travel to family to all the things that gardening and cooking and drinking wine. And in 2019, on a little trip to the Northeast, we were in the Pennsylvania area, Delaware. We visited a number of historic sites, museums, gardens, and one of them was the Hagley Museum in Delaware, which I thought was fascinating, which is the old DuPont powder mill where they developed gunpowder during the Civil War. Yeah, I ended up going to the National Museum of Industrial History. I'd never been there before. It's located in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And the reason that I visited the National Museum of Industrial History was I was searching out some publications that I'd been familiar with because I'd been a member of an organization called the Newcomen Society. And it was a business group where they had an honorary dinner for various companies, and the leaders of those companies would get up and talk about the history or the recent developments in their business. So it was a fascinating kind of an insider look at business from a different perspective that you wouldn't see perhaps in the Wall Street Journal. But I was looking for these publications, and I found out that there was a trove of these publications that were located at the National Museum of Industrial History. So I gave them a call, and they hosted me. I came back and visited with them, and I've always been intrigued with industrialization and companies, the businesses that we do business with as water treaters. So as I'm touring the museum, I'm looking at all these wonderful artifacts, and I'm thinking they're really celebrating industrial history in America. But what's missing is the role that we played as water treaters in support of the success of industrialization. And so I had this crazy idea. And before I left, I was talking to the director and I said, you need to have an exhibit or exhibits on industrial water treatment. So I know you have a question shortly and talking about explaining to people about our industry. So you can imagine the challenge that I faced when somebody in a museum setting was approached and said, you should have something that deals with industrial water treatment. So their eyes kind of glazed over very quickly. But as I left, they were open-ended to that. And then, of course, right on the heels of my visit was the onset of COVID. The COVID pandemic kind of really, gummed up the works. So I was not able to pursue the development of this idea and this concept as quickly as I would have liked to. So over a series of literally hundreds of phone calls and emails and outreach to the museum, we were able to develop increasing interest on their part of looking at the possibility for an exhibit on water treatment. And really what they came up with was a series, an idea that it would not be a singular exhibit, but rather a thread of telling the various stories that we can tell about water and water treatment throughout the museum in the future. So that's really where we're moving. And we're beginning with the initial phase of looking at how did water come to play a role in industry? Well, we all know that most factories, most industries developed along water sources for the physical use of water. In other words, water wheels to power the factory. And as things changed, they began to rely on the ability to transfer energy from a fossil fuel, whether it be oil, coal, gas, to a steam producing device, a steam boiler, and utilize that energy in the manufacturing process. So that's the beginning of the story that we're going to tell at that museum.
Paul, you mentioned it's in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Of all places, why Bethlehem, Pennsylvania?
This museum is situated in a very unique situation. They're located in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is located in the Lehigh Valley. Lehigh Valley, of course, as you may know, is really could be considered the cradle of industrialization. Pennsylvania was a hotbed of industries and creativity and fuel sources and coal and oil. And so the Bethlehem Steel Mill, located on the Lehigh River, what became really the preeminent and most powerful industry of its time. At one point, Bethlehem Steel had 33,000 employees. The factory covered over 5 miles long. Most of the steel that was used in cities at that time, from the Empire State Building to many of the high-rise buildings, came from Bethlehem Steel. They invented that I-beam that's used throughout construction of high-rise buildings. All the steel in the Golden Gate Bridge came from Bethlehem Steel. And during World War II, the war effort resulted in them developing many of the munitions that were used during the war in Europe. At one point, they were building a ship a day at Bethlehem Steel, and they had shipyards throughout the country at the time. Bethlehem, the community of Bethlehem, few people realize, but it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of its tie to the Moravian religious sects that developed there. So you have the interest of the entire world that visits UNESCO sites just to see what they're all about. There are over 15,000 visitors that come to the museum every year. The museum itself is located in the old electric maintenance building of the Bethlehem Steel Mill. So as you well know, Bethlehem Steel no longer exists as a operating entity. They went bankrupt in 1996, and the site was acquired, and most of the steel mill was dismantled. But what remains is what they refer to as the steel stacks, which was the old blast furnaces that are housed right along the river. And there are a number of old buildings that still exist. And the electric maintenance building is where the National Museum of Industrial History is housed. So that in and of itself is a great setting for, telling the story of industrialization. And of course, telling the story about industrial water, because you've got a magnificent example of heavy water use in a steel mill that doesn't exist anymore. And of course, the Lehigh Valley and of course, Pennsylvania in and of itself, many people don't realize that. Many of the folks that are members of AWT and in the water treatment industry don't realize that many of the old legacy companies in water treatment were housed in that region. Betts, Calgon, Drew, and regionally, you had companies like Mogul, Dearborn, and ultimately Nalco, because they were located in the Chicago area. The old six-pack companies, if you will, all in that particular region. So it's a natural fit for telling one of the aspects of the stories of water treatment.
Now, as you envision what these exhibits are going to look like, can you share that with the Scaling Up Nation?
Absolutely. It was very interesting to try to see how we fit, because I think what's happened with museums in general is that they've become a different entity, if you will. Museum visitors really are more interested in interactives. They want to get hands-on, particularly when children or students are involved. They want to come in and learn something, and they want a real takeaway, as opposed to walking by a static display of a machine and go, oh, I know what that's all about. So I was thinking, gosh, here's an opportunity for us to share the knowledge that we have as water treatment professionals with the public, to engage their thinking, their critical thinking about water, the important role that it plays in our day-to-day lives, and how, that what we do as water treatment professionals is so very, very important beyond the initial scope of, oh, we use water every day to bathe and we brush our teeth and we wash our cars. But what about all the other uses of water?
So you talked about interactive. Do you envision that these exhibits will have old boilers that people can go up and touch, artifacts from maybe the first water treatment companies and how they created some of the things that they're now doing in a day-to-day practice? What do you see them as?
Exactly. And one of that first examples of that would be trace the story of steam in steam boilers. Then, of course, we know steam and steam boilers just don't exist. They don't operate, and they don't really serve a purpose unless water is used. And we know as water treatment professionals that if we don't manage that water properly, a lot of bad things can happen. And one of the things that we look back historically at is some of the catastrophes that have taken place. A classic example is few people realize there was a catastrophe that took place on the Mississippi River, and that is the explosion of the boilers that were on the steamship Sultana. This was at the end of the Civil War. And we were bringing our soldiers for the Union back north from the South. And they loaded them on these steamships, and one of them was the Sultana. And as you can imagine, water treatment was really not a pivotal role at that point. And also how they built and how they operated and how they situated the boilers themselves on these vessels led itself to catastrophes happening. So here's a steamship full of people, and it blows up. The boilers explode, and it kills virtually everybody on the ship. Few people realize that more people died on the Sultana than died on the Titanic. And the reason that we don't see a lot of that history, why wasn't that story more prominent? Well, there was a person by the name of Abraham Lincoln who was assassinated within a couple of days of the sinking of the Sultana. So the front page was more about the assassination of Lincoln than it was this catastrophe. So back to your question, and that is, we're going to be talking about boilers and how we integrate and work with boilers. And we're looking for examples of things that will support those stories. Photographs, reports, artifacts like boiler failures, ruptures, the examples of pitting. And that tells one part of the story, but one of the things that we want to share too is demonstrations and opportunities for people to also understand the leadership role that industrial water treaters played in field analytics. Because today you can get a blood test and do it at home. But we were one of the early pioneers of the utilization of field testing for confirming and determining what procedures and processes need to be adjusted in the field in testing water. And so we're also going to have a display talking about analytical processes. So we're looking at old examples, whether it be an old Sawyer Bridge, for example, and you probably remember that, but various methods that were used for testing. And that's one of the very first phases that we're going to be talking about.
Now, if you or I go to this museum, we're going to be geeking out seeing all of this stuff. How is the general public going to take all of that in, see testing analytics, see some of the things that you mentioned? I mean, I'd love to see some early corrosion coupons if they existed. How is the general public going to take away information from this?
I think that's been our lifelong challenge. And I think on one of your other podcasts, you talked about the challenge of being able to explain to the general public what we do.
That's almost every podcast, I think.
Every time. I think about this and I think about going to a cocktail party, if you will, and somebody says, "What do you do?" And if you're a lawyer, you say, "Well, I'm an attorney," or "I'm a lawyer." And people go, "Okay, well, fine," they move on. But if you say water treatment, I'm in the industrial water treatment business, that gives you an opportunity to tell a more engaging story, obviously. And so I refer to that and say you're asking about, what's my elevator pitch? I mean, that's basically what's your elevator pitch? What do you do? And most people don't even know what a boiler room is. There are executives and companies and institutions and commercial facilities and hospitals that don't know a boiler room exists in their facility. So really being able to tell that story and how we manage water and how it is so critically important to their day-to-day lives. How can we really have them go away thinking about how important water and the management of water is? Because we know full well that it's a life and death situation for many people, whether it's Legionella or whether it's the surgical instruments that are being used in a procedure. If we don't have the steam and they're not sterile, people get sick. Product quality, the food quality doesn't exist. And then even more importantly today, and we talked about technology earlier, and that is data centers. I mean, all of a sudden, if you can't use your cell phone or your internet connection because the data centers goes down because of a heat exchanger failure in their cooling system, or their energy source fails because of the water treatment. Those are things that we feel will really give the public a better understanding of what we do.
Can somebody go to the museum today and see some of this exhibit?
It is in the process right now. We expect probably within the next 6 months to have the full aspect of our first stage going in. Yeah, it's been an interesting process, because the museum is a Smithsonian affiliate. A lot of people don't realize that too. So, the Smithsonian is one of the most premier museum collections in the world. And the fact that this is part of it, I think really, really helps a lot. But the first phase is going to be integrating. There's actually a model boiler that was used in training for the railroads that you can actually see the internals of what's taking place in a boiler. And that's going to be coupled with our first initial explanation of how water is so important.
I can't wait to see all this. I'm sure you've got phase one, phase two, on down the line. There are a lot of people listening today. Maybe their company is 100 years old. They have some of the artifacts that you are looking for. You've got a direct line to them now. How can they help you?
First of all, you can post up either an email source or they can go through AWT where we actually have a subcommittee now, but basically we'd like their input. In other words, their opportunity to maybe take a photograph or a explanation of what these artifacts are like, what they have available. And we're looking for other ideas. We're not exclusive to ideas. So they may have a story or stories to tell with supporting materials and artifacts that might be available. So they can send emails to me, they can send emails to others on the water task group, and then we're going to have a way that we can get these artifacts into the museum and they can get recognition for that. You know, if you're contributing a supporter and an AWT member or an associate or somebody in the business or somebody just picks up this podcast and says, I have something that would fit, we're going to recognize those people for their submissions.
Well, I'll make it really easy for the Scaling Up Nation. I'll make sure to put your contact information and any information that you give me that you want our listeners to have on how they can contact you, how they can maybe donate some of the archives that they might have. We're going to make that as easy as possible. I'm curious, are there any misconceptions you hope an exhibit like this clears up for good?
Misconceptions. Guys, I guess not to take water for granted, to really understand, this is, if you step back, even from the day to day, what we see and interface with in water treatment, sometimes it's important for us to step back and realize, this molecule that we work with is so unique. We talked about, I can remember over the years, the opportunities of giving presentations and technical talks. And I can remember a couple of questions, and perhaps you've had those questions as well, Trace. What's a good water quality? What is good water? And my answer to that is, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to drink it? You want to put it in a boiler? You want to put it in a cooling tower? Do you want to wash vegetables with it? We as water treatment professionals know that we have a multitude of tools and methods by which we can change and really manage water where we want it and how we want to. Kind of a parallel question to that too is, what's a good pH? Has anybody ever asked you, what's a good pH?
Sure. And you have to answer it exactly the way that you said. What are you going to do with it?
One of the analogies that I like to use is the human body. If we take the pH of the various fluids that exist in the human body, the pH of a tear is much different than the pH of saliva. And it's much different than the pH of the fluid in your stomach that's digesting food. So, in just that particular vessel, you have a changing pH that serves a multitude of purposes because the pH in a cooling tower is very different than a pH in a boiler, or should be.
We have a tremendous amount of people that have either retired from this industry or you're getting ready to retire. And we don't have the same amount of people that are getting involved in this industry. Do you foresee that the exhibit at the museum can help with this? I'm going to say crisis.
Exactly. I think back to on my personal experiences, one of the greatest challenges that I had as a business owner was finding good people. And I think one of the subliminal ideas behind this exhibit was to raise the visibility and recognition of professional water treaters. And I put us on par, but maybe even a little bit higher than lawyers, but raising the visibility and recognition and to present career path opportunities. There's no water treatment school. Nobody goes to water treatment 101. And if you think about the real success stories and the people that are really good in our industry, they require a lot of skills, knowledge of chemistry, math, physics, industrialization, engineering, construction. maintenance, communications, hydrology, all of those subjects. You may be studying one of those. And how do you realize that you can take the knowledge that you have in one sector and apply it into a business in an industry that has universal appeal and is so vitally important? What we do as professional water treaters is truly an important thing. And, I never forget that.
10 years from now, people go to this exhibit and it is just wildly past what you had hoped it to be. Describe that exhibit for us.
As they enter that museum, they first have a real understanding of the role that water played from the very, very initial utilization of the physical aspect of water, and then how that changed as we began to use water to create steam and then develop other processes in which water supported the success of that. So they'll walk through and they'll see that first phase, and they'll really take that link. And as we talk, because when we talk about industrialization and a museum of industrial history, we're not only be talking about steel, we're talking about paper making, we're talking about various manufacturing processes. And as we move through and have exhibits on all of these different kinds of industries, perhaps we're now talking about the industry of microprocessors. And how do we finish a inherently so technically advanced process of a silicon wafer that results in a tiny, tiny portion that's in your phone that allows us to do what we're doing today? Water was involved in that in many respects in a major way. And so when somebody walks through the museum, they're going to see, oh, water was important here, water was important there. And we have them have a greater appreciation for that element, for that molecule, if you will, and for what we've done to support industrial advancement, not only in America, but also in the world.
We have roughly about 20,000 members of the Scaling Up Nation. You've already told them that if they potentially have an artifact to get in contact with you, and we'll put all that on our show notes page. What are some other ways that you need help and maybe they can help?
Well, one of the big things is this is an idea that we're seeing fruition come to pass. Most people realize the funding for these kinds of institutions is challenging. I don't think they're going to be able to rely on governmental support in the future as much as they have in the past. And for us to be out front with this idea, this concept, and to tell our story, I think we're going to have to do this, and it requires funding. And we're asking people that have an interest in supporting this to be also consider donating to our effort financially. We'd like donations, and we've got a mechanism established at the museum. Sponsorships that will be available are available currently. You can donate $1,000 or you can donate $50,000 to the museum and have it go towards the development of this particular initiative. That's an important thing. I think we're looking for companies to step up and take a leadership role, as well as gain the recognition. As a sponsor, your name is going to be there in support of this effort. So when you talk about today's 15,000 visitors coming from around the world to visit a UNESCO site, a proximity to major hubs in the world, whether it's Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., New York City, we're getting a lot of exposure. And we hope that companies and individuals will join us in this effort to tell our story.
What's the ending message you want our listeners to leave with?
I guess the ending message, Trace, would be looking back in the history of where we've come. I think it's important to recognize that we're a fast-moving society. We're advancing, and the word that's used oftentimes is disruption. And I don't want us to lose the history that is so important because we're disrupting the future going forward. I'm part of the past, but I think our rich history should be presented in an exhibit for all to enjoy at the museum. We look at opportunities as well for portions of our exhibits to ultimately be available in the form of kiosks that might be able to tell part of the story, perhaps at an AWT convention, a kiosk in the lobby, or perhaps a display that moves from school to school, from region to region, county to county, that tells the story in greater depth. So it's not just at the museum. I think it has the possibility to expand well beyond that. And, being self-serving to in some respects, look at new opportunities to have an outreach and find those people that are really interested in making a difference in an industry that does that.
Well, we will try to help as much as we can through this podcast. If you let us know opening day, any of your needs, we'll try to communicate that with the Scaling Up Nation. I am so happy that you are taking the reins and making sure that we have something like this in the most amazing industry in the world. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Well, my pleasure.
Well, I'm not quite done with you yet. I do have some lightning round questions. These are questions I ask of all of my guests. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Absolutely, I am.
All right. Lightning round question number one. If you could go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as a water treater, what advice would you give yourself?
I guess really what I would say to myself would be maybe not run as fast as you have, take more opportunities to build bridges, develop more intensive relationships. Because I think that's one of the things that's missing by virtue of your very first question, and that is, how has the water treatment industry changed? I think the ability to develop a relationship with those that we serve has changed dramatically. And so I would say I would like to build better bridges, more bridges. I would also encourage people to consider beginning a process early in their career of thinking about giving back. I think we do that so oftentimes late in life, but if you can do it early on, I think it's very rewarding, and it's something that use your time, talent, and treasure to support a worthy cause. And it doesn't have to be a museum; it could be a philanthropic effort in your community. But think about doing that.
I want to change my next question slightly because of your years of experience. What are your favorite water treatment resources?
I think a valuable resource, at least one that I've been exposed to most recently, is your podcast. Early on, even before the days of AWT, we had a similar industry association with a group of companies that dealt with a particular series of suppliers. We would meet and we would get down in the weeds technically, talking about why do we use this phosphonate versus that phosphonate, or how much polytriazole needs to be in the cooling water to control the corrosion rates at an acceptable level. I always looked at trying to get the knowledge of the business aspects because I found those more challenging than the technical aspects, the human resource portions. But, my resources, and I look back, I really searched long and hard for expertise. I was looking for mentors, if you will. I would encourage the membership of AWT and the folks that are in our business, both as a supplier as well as a consumer of support, is to really realize the importance of listening to and learning from the mentors that are out there. And the guys like you that have been in the business for a number of years and, continue to support that.
Well, Hollywood listens to this podcast all the time to find out what their next hit movie is going to be. They're going to hear this one. They're going to write a script about your life. Who do you want playing you?
Trace, if I was the person that selected the lead role, I would probably select maybe Michael Douglas, Brad Pitt, of course. I think he's right there, and Jeff Bridges. Yeah. However, if given the experience of casting experts, I suspect they would probably choose Bill Murray or Will Ferrell, probably even Gene Wilder.
So we're going to change this last question up from our standard questions because I have somebody of your stature here. What's one thing about our industry you wish more people understood?
Just not taking the resource of water for granted. People would ask again that story. So, what is it you do? And I said, most oftentimes, if you take a week's worth of newspapers, more than likely there's a topic that concerns our industry or our industries involved with in one of those stories. It might be a front page story about Legionella. It might be a story about the physical nature of a flood that, what has happened. Now, we're not treating flood water, but water is an integral part of that story. So just having people understand water more intensely and more completely, and then also look around the corner and say, water treatment guys, we're in good hands with the professional water treatment people.
Well, Paul, I want to thank you for not only coming on this podcast, but for all of the work that you're doing so water treaters like myself can go to the museum that you're creating. And so many people that don't even know what our industry is are going to be exposed to it. So thank you for all of that.
My pleasure. It was a pleasure being with you.
Scaling Up Nation, Paul and I spoke about him coming on this podcast at the last AWT conference. And I had met Paul maybe from afar. We might have had a conversation here or there, but I really enjoyed talking with him at this past AWT conference. And as we were speaking at the conference, he wanted to make sure that people knew about the National Museum of Industrial History in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and about what they're doing around our industry. So I don't know if you've heard about that. I know AWT has been talking about it for a couple of years. The last two conferences, they've talked about the museum. But if you didn't know about it, that's exactly why we wanted to have him on the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And it was sure fun reminiscing about his career. He talked about the golden age of chromate all the way to automation and AI. So he has seen so much in his career. And of course, he is continuing to give back from his career in working with the Industrial Water Task Group and leading the water treatment exhibit at the National Museum of Industrial History. And you will be in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and you'll be able to see this exhibit that we are talking about. Now, we will have a link so you can go directly to the museum page and you can see all the things that they are doing. As Paul said, they are getting ready to open parts of this exhibit very soon, and they are looking for more things to put in their exhibit. Now, I've seen some tremendous things from people that listen to the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Several of our sponsors, one of our sponsors is over 100 years old, and they had a lot of really interesting water treatment stuff in their archives, and they donated some of that to the exhibit. So maybe you have something like that that will teach the masses how awesome our industry is and where we came from. So we've got all of that information for you to contact Paul if you've got something like that, or maybe you have an idea that you want to share. Maybe you want to join the Industrial Water Task Group. Well, all of that, you want to reach out to Paul, and we'll make that very easy because all of his information is on our show notes page. Now, the planned exhibit will tell the story of water as a driver of industrialization, from water wheels and steam to modern cooling towers and boilers, and most of all, giving a highlight to all the people that make those things possible. Yes, that's you and I. That's the industrial water treater. So I just think that that is awesome that we have an exhibit that is dedicated to our amazing career. And people are going to that exhibit to learn about what it is that we do and also the why behind what we do and all the things that, because of why we do it, brings to the modern society. Well, Nation, if you've ever struggled to explain to your friends or family what you do for a living and wonder how our work fits into the bigger picture of industrial history, you are going to enjoy this exhibit. So again, we're going to have all the information for you by going to our show notes page. And as always, thank you for listening to the Scaling Up H2O podcast. You know, Paul's advice at the very end was some of my favorite advice. He advises everybody to seek out mentors, to learn the business side as well as the chemistry, and never take water for granted. It's something that every listener can apply. It's something that every person can apply. And it's my hope that you apply that in at least one way during the next week. And next week, we'll have a brand new episode for you of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. Have a great week, folks. There's no doubt about it. Taking the Certified Water Technologist examination is one of the most challenging tasks you'll do in your water treatment career. But I'm here to help you with the first step. And that first step is my free gift to you, and that is a free CWT prep course. That's right. If you go to scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep, you'll get a portion of the paid course where you can see the type of materials that you'll be working with if you decide to sign up for the full course. Again, this is my free gift to you to get you on the journey to getting your Certified Water Technologist designation. Go to scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep today.